Hey, friends! Just so you know, we enjoy the swear word and we rely on good old fashioned humor to get through some seriously dark subject matter. At no time do we intend any disrespect toward the victims or families of the victims in the cases we cover. Also, be sure to listen to the end for a few palate cleansing bloopers to reset your mindset. And with that, we thank you for listening and we hope you enjoy. Hey, friends! Welcome to Crime Will Tell. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Jamie.
And today we're talking about Grant Hardin.
Okay.
I see the look of confusion and non recognition on your face.
Mm-hmm.
Grant has been in the news.
Okay.
Mr. Hardin has been in the news. And I'm not surprised that you haven't heard of him because we're always heads down research on other things that we miss, current events sometimes until it's no longer current. And then we're like, oh, I didn't realize that happened. Oh, okay. Hardin has been up to some horrible shit for the last couple of decades. But most recently, he escaped from an Arkansas prison by walking out the front door in a makeshift law enforcement uniform. He literally just fucking strolled right out the front door. Clearly, this Hardin guy has big brass balls.
Oh.
Because
Neato.
there's video of him just strolling out the front door. And it took about 20 minutes for the prison staff to realize that he was missing. That's how convincing he was. We'll get into it.
Okay.
He was on the run
Yikes.
for 12 days, 12 fucking days until he was recaptured about a mile and a half or 2.4 kilometers from the prison he escaped from.
Okay.
This Hardin guy is a different kind of awful. The wake of bullshit he has left has like an extra layer of deceit to it because he was a law enforcement officer.
Oh.
The public should be able to 100% trust him and his intentions. And this deceit, this fucking nasty personality of his allowed him to prey on anyone he wanted for decades.
Okay. I do know this case is sounding a little bit familiar to me. I think I did see some just headlines about it, but I didn't look into him. So I'm excited to see what this motherfucker was up to.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised at all that you've seen headlines because this guy was plastered all over the news headlines and news cycles for like 2 weeks until he was captured, almost 2 weeks. So this is a heavy, heavy case today. We will be talking about rape and murder. Okay. And so as usual, I have my trusty bourbon glass full of Azel Bay Aidenhay.
Nice.
Because this is a heavy case and this should take the edge off. I don't know. What have you, James?
I am drinking some Hemingway rye whiskey. It's pretty delicious.
Well, cheers, my friend.
Cheers to you. Clink.
Clink. My oldest son, Nathan, really wanted us to cover this case. Originally, this wasn't the case that would be for this episode. We're on episode 53 now, but it's not often I receive a text that says, Mom, you have to cover this case next. This guy is a world-class asshole and he just escaped from prison. Hardin, like I said, has been in the news recently. Yes, but he's been up to no good since at least 1997. Nobody knew. Nobody fucking knew the bullshit that he was up to. First, let's go back just a few weeks to Sunday, May 25th, 2025. Hardin, who had been serving time at the North Central Unit in Calico Rock, Arkansas, this is a medium security prison.
Okay.
According to a New York Post article written by Caitlin McCormick on June 6th of this year, quote, Hardin escaped after impersonating a corrections officer in dress and manner, according to a court document. A prison officer in one of the guard towers didn't even figure it out because Hardin was so fucking convincing that he just opened a security gate for him to walk through. So
Shit.
if you're listening, I encourage anybody to go out. There's so much material on this guy, but most of it's all the same. There isn't a whole lot to this case, but there's a lot of coverage on this
Hmm.
case. And essentially, you can see video or like a still image of him in a surveillance video at this prison pushing what looks like, those carts, like if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you get those carts and they're designed to help you have like long pieces of wood.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks like one of those carts, and on it is like wood and just like it looks like almost building materials.
Hmm.
And he is pushing this cart thing, and he is wearing what looks like a law enforcement uniform.
Okay.
So you can see this on the video. He just walked out. He was so
Just
convincing in
fucking
dress and manner.
ugh,
Yep.
just cool as can be. I mean,
Just
I guess
cool as
that's
a
what you
cucumber.
have to do if you're all like with my cart, and they're like,
Yeah.
"What's up with this guy?" Like
Yeah.
you
No,
have
he
to
was cool
be.
as a cucumber. He was
Wow.
wearing a shirt that identified him as a law enforcement official, which apparently he crafted himself. So, guy knows how to fucking sew.
Okay.
Authorities know this because after they realized that Hardin had escaped and they reviewed footage from the surveillance systems, they saw what he was wearing and they're like, it didn't look quite like their uniforms, but they went and did a uniform inventory to double check, and there were no uniforms missing. So that's how they knew he had to have put this together somehow, some way. So it was arts and crafts time in Hardin's cell. It's making this shit.
I got an Etsy shop.
After nearly 2 weeks on the run, it was about 12 days he was on the run. Hardin was finally recaptured on Friday, June 6th, 2025. And according to a USA Today article written by Janine Santucci on June 7th, 2025, quote, convicted murderer and rapist Grant Hardin was found at about 3 p.m. on June 6th west of the North Central Unit State Prison near Moccasin Creek in Izard County, Arkansas. In a photo of his arrest, Hardin is seen sitting on the ground in a vegetated area with his hands behind his back and a baseball cap and dirty t-shirt and pants. So when they recaptured him and they finally found him, there's this picture that's been circulating. He was finally captured when search dogs picked up his scent and led the authorities to his hiding place. So the doggies
Nice.
found him. This was a massive fucking manhunt. It was so big. Hundreds of people at the local, state, and federal level joined forces to track down this ass clown.
Nice.
They also deployed drones, fucking aircraft, bloodhounds, and then, of course, hundreds of people that were on foot searching for this guy. The terrain where they found Hardin can be tricky. So Moccasin Creek, where he was found hiding, was pretty flooded from all the rainfall in the 2 weeks after he escaped. It was almost like it was almost like when I was researching this, I got the impression that like he escaped and God was like, no, 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 no. And then like deluged the area for a few weeks with this heavy rainfall. But that rainfall, the weather, basically, all this rainfall, it made for pretty treacherous terrain and it made it really difficult for authorities to effectively track him down
Right. Like
quickly.
it's good for him because he wasn't able to get as far, but it sucks for the search.
That's exactly it. He was captured, like I said, about a mile and a half or 2.4 kilometers away from the prison that he escaped from. And investigators believe that because of the rainfall, he really didn't have an opportunity to get much further than he did. Originally, they were thinking that maybe he had left the state because they really couldn't find him.
Hmm.
But they realized that he had just been hunkered down right around the prison area because he
Just
just
chilling in
couldn't.
the woods.
Yeah, the
Ugh.
weather just really prevented him from getting any further away. And like you said, it also hampered the search effort. So it was a blessing and a curse, really. Even though everyone knew it was Hardin they captured, they know what he looks like, they know he escaped. They still followed protocol. And after getting back to the Rock prison, they fingerprinted him just to make sure it was him and not some clever disguise by someone, did you ever see that movie Face Off with John Travolta and Nick
Yeah.
Cage? Yeah.
Yeah.
They medically assessed him to make sure. I mean, he was on the run for 12 days. They don't know what kind of provisions he had, if he hurt himself, whatever. He was fine, but they had to check him out. And then they immediately transferred him to the Varner unit in Gould, Arkansas, which is a supermax
Oh,
prison.
nice.
Supermax prison. So here in the United States, our highest of high security prisons are called supermaxes, and essentially you can't sneeze without having to fill out a form, basically. So the other reason why they fingerprinted him and wanted to ensure that it was Hardin that they recaptured was because apparently all the cool kids were escaping from prisons in the southern part of the United States in that particular time frame. Because 9 days earlier, on May 16th, 2025, 10 goddamn inmates serving time at a New Orleans prison in the state of Louisiana escaped.
Yeah, just shot right out
Just
a
fucking,
door.
yeah. So uh, as of Hardin's capture on June 6th, 8 of the 10 inmates from the New Orleans prison had been captured. But even today, as we record on June 20th, 2 of those inmates are still in the wind. That's insane.
Which is
So
crazy.
if you
Yeah.
look at a map, and the reason why this is applicable to Hardin's situation is if you look at a map, the state of Louisiana sits just below the state of Arkansas. So the southern border of Arkansas shares a border, the northern border of Louisiana. So Louisiana, I couldn't have said that more confusing. Louisiana's northern border is Arkansas's southern border. So they're right next to each other. So when you've got 2 high-profile prison escapes in relatively the similar areas of the United States, before we get to the murder Hardin committed that put him behind bars, can we first touch on how fucking rank he must have been
Yeah,
when
12
he was
days.
found?
Ew.
2 weeks on the run, hiding out in a forest that's soggy from massive rainfall, no shower, no oral hygiene, no fucking toilet paper. I'm making assumptions here, but I'm figuring personal hygiene was probably the least of his concerns when he was like, I'm going to escape from this prison. And he didn't pack a go bag with like a solar shower and a bar of soap and a pit stick and toothpaste, toothbrush, and
Some
fucking, I don't know,
snacks.
cologne and some
Yeah.
snacky snacks and change of clothes. Then I thought, I wonder if human stench, I was thinking back to like the 1200s, 1500s, 1700s. I wonder if the stench from not clean humans dissipates after a while. I wonder if it
I
just
don't
goes
know.
away, kind of like a decomposing body just stops smelling after a while. I wonder if an alive decomposing body stops smelling after a
Yeah.
while.
Or they just got used to it. But I have a feeling that those bloodhounds were like, I know right where this stinky motherfucker is because he reeks.
I don't know.
It's
Maybe
like
he took
Pigpen.
advantage of the rainfall to clean up. I,
Maybe.
I don't
What
know. I
was
don't
what
know.
was he
But
eating and drinking?
who knows?
You
I have
mean
no idea.
rainwater? Okay.
Maybe he's probably living off of, I don't know, maybe stuff he found in the he had to have, I'm sure he drank water where he could find it, otherwise he wouldn't be alive after 12 days, but I'm sure he found enough. I mean, it's clear he's lost weight, but I couldn't tell if he lost weight as a result of just being imprisoned, because he was a fat
Hmm.
fuck when he was put into prison, and he's still a bigger person, but he's lost considerable weight. So I don't know if that happened more
He's
recently or
probably
just
working out.
over time, hitting the prison gym.
Doing some
Anyway, I
weights in
just
the
wanted to
yard.
touch on that because no one talks about the hidden logistics of stuff like that, and that fucking fascinates me.
Yeah.
Like, think about the condition. Like, I'll talk all day long about people that lived in the 1700s. I'll talk all about that shit because ill. Now, what landed Hardin in prison was his decision to murder an absolutely innocent man in the
Hmm.
coldest blood possible. The bluntness with which he committed this crime is jarring. So we're going to skip over to Gateway, Arkansas. which is
Okay.
a very, very small town. We're talking 450 residents.
Ooh.
Gateway is a little over a mile or 1.6 kilometers from the Missouri border.
Okay.
On Thursday, February 23rd, 2017, James Lee Appleton was on the phone with his brother in law, Andrew Tillman, who happened to be the mayor of Gateway at the time. Appleton was in his water department work truck. So he worked for the city water department. And according to Tillman, he had pulled off to the side of the road so that he wouldn't lose his phone signal while he was talking to Tillman. So you can imagine it's a rural area. He was probably going into what he knew to be a dead zone. And so he pulled over to the side of the road to finish his conversation with a strong signal. What happened next was confusing for Tillman. Tillman told investigators that he heard what he thought sounded like a car door slamming, like somebody slamming a car door really hard. That's what it sounded like to him. And then there was silence. Now, their phone connection, their phone call was still connected, but Appleton wasn't making any noise and he wasn't answering Tillman. And Tillman was like, something's wrong. Like something's wrong. In the 2023 documentary titled Devil in the Ozarks, produced by Discovery Plus, Tillman was interviewed about the murder of his brother in law, James Appleton. At the time of this documentary in 2020, when it was released in 2023, I don't know how many years it took for them to create and edit the documentary before it was
Mm-hmm.
released, but it was released in 2023. And at that time of being interviewed for it, he was still the mayor of Gateway. You know, in my research or whatever, what's interesting is that today, here we are in June 2025, Andrew Tillman is no longer the mayor of Gateway, but his wife, Cheryl Tillman, is.
Oh,
Cheryl Tillman is the sister of James Lee Appleton, who was killed.
gotcha. Okay.
So, again, the town is very small. And as a result of that, they haven't really needed to have like a law enforcement force, a police force. They haven't really needed a police force, a police department, whatever. But they have had in the town's existence one police officer, and that police officer was Grant Hardin.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
You can kind of see where like things are starting to intersect. Everybody's
Yeah.
in this town. Grant Hardin lived there. James Appleton was there. So, a little bit about Mr. Appleton. He was born November 14th, 1957, in Merriam, Kansas, to parents Jack and Gwen. He had four siblings, and all five of them were a pretty tight knit group growing up. I mean, of course, they squabbled and such, but they did a lot together. He graduated from Southwest High School in 1975 and worked for nearly 3 decades at Emerson Electric before transitioning to work as a carpenter for more than a decade. Like he did carpentry for like 12 years. So he's very good with his hands before working at the Gateway Rural Water Authority in Gateway. This was the job he held when he was killed.
Okay.
He was exactly the same age as my dad. He was a matter of days older than my dad, born the same year. And so as I was looking into this, and of course I told Nate, I'm like, fine, all right, fine. I'll cover the Grant Hardin case for the next episode. Okay. I'll do. And he's like, this guy is fucking vile. And he's not wrong. But as I was looking into it and I learned about James Appleton, who Hardin killed, there were so many similarities to my dad. He, like James, like you see his picture, he has the kindest smile. By all accounts, he was beloved. He was beloved. He had children. He was married. I mean, his siblings loved. I mean, he was beloved. And his death had reverberations and ripple effect. And it's very tragic. This world lost a wonderful soul in James Appleton's death. I'm calling him Appleton because I don't want to call him James because then it's confusing because I call you James, but then we also live in Appleton. And I was like, well, I'm fucked. So I'm calling him Appleton, but I'm not talking about Appleton. In the Discovery Plus documentary, again, the Devil in the Ozarks, A man who lives and works in Gateway was interviewed because he was the poor schlep who found Appleton after he was shot and killed.
Ugh.
This guy's name is John Bray, and John Bray was born and raised in this area. He was heading home after a day of work when he saw a car pulled over on the side of the road, and then down a bit in front of that car was a pickup truck. And the individual in the car waved him by. So as he's driving down the road heading home, he kind of slowed up because they were pulled to the side of a rural road, and the guy in the car waved him and he was like, oh, okay. So he went, and then he passed the pickup truck and he saw that it was James Appleton in the pickup truck, who's a good friend of John Bray's. And so Appleton waved. Bray could see that Appleton was on the phone. Appleton waved. Bray waved back. He didn't think anything of it. Bray kept going. And then as he got about, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 yards down the road, he heard what he thought was a rifle shot. And he was like, huh. Again, didn't think anything of it. Hunting is very big in those areas. Kept going. But shortly after the gunshot that he heard, it was a white car that was pulled over on the side of the road. And then there was a white pickup truck. And the pickup truck was driven by Appleton. That white car that caught up with him and then got behind him and then turned left onto a road and drove off. And Bray was like, huh, that's interesting. Because he knew who was in the white car.
Ah, okay.
And he was like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, I don't like the way this feels. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back and check on my buddy. So he circled back and he went, and James Appleton's pickup truck was still on the side of the road, exactly where it was when Bray first passed him. And he pulled up and he saw that Appleton was kind of slumped over in his car and it's in the truck. And he walked up to the window and he saw that he had been shot directly in the face. Now, I know we've mentioned this on previous episodes, but there is something horrific about head wounds.
Yeah.
I think it was in our very first case, the Mary Borthwick episode 1, where there were hatchets to heads. And we talked a lot about how head wounds bleed profusely. But for me, there is something so gnarly about face injuries.
Yeah. To not look at somebody that you care about and be able to recognize them because they've been hurt in a way. I don't know. It just is a whole other level of trauma that I can't even.
It makes my stomach turn a little bit.
Yeah.
About it. Not because it's like, oh, it's blood and I'm queasy. It's the inhumanity of it, of the action of shooting someone in the face.
Yeah. And that's his friend's memory of, like, his last memory of his friend. Like, I bet that just plays through his brain more than it should, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a close range wound. So Andrew Tillman, remember, he is Appleton's brother-in-law. Andrew Tillman shared that when he was on the phone with Appleton before he was shot, Appleton told him that there was a car that came up and stopped a bit behind him. So Appleton was already pulled over to the side of the road talking with Tillman. And he mentioned to Tillman, he's like, oh, that's weird. There's a car that just pulled up and pulled to the side of the road behind me. And he's just sitting there. I don't know. I wonder if he thinks I'm a police officer or something, because this work pickup truck had like a flashing light on top that was going.
Okay.
But I don't think so. I mean, we're talking 400 and some odd residents. Everybody knows everybody.
You know what's up with everybody.
Up. Yeah. And then after Bray passed by on his way to go home, the car then pulled back onto the road and pulled up alongside Appleton's pickup truck, at which time Appleton told Tillman on the phone, oh, he's easing on up now, meaning he's coming on up alongside his truck now. Like, oh, okay, so everything's fine. And that's when the driver of the car held up, like the windows were rolled down. Appleton's window was rolled down. Just happened to be that way. And he shot Appleton directly in the face. Now, Bray thought he heard a rifle shot, but it was actually a shotgun
Mm.
that was used. When the police interviewed Bray, they asked him if he had any idea who shot Appleton. Because Bray, when he circled back and found Appleton shot, obviously dead, he called the police and he said, "There's somebody shot out here. You need to get out here." He told them, "Well, yes, of course. He lives right over there." It was Grant Hardin. And he's like, you could tell Bray had a really hard time telling the investigators that it was Hardin. The actual interview with Bray is in this documentary, Devil in the Ozarks. So you can see it, hear it. And it wasn't because he didn't want to tell the officers who shot Appleton. It was because Hardin had been Gateway's chief of police for a short period of time, having been elevated to that position roughly a year earlier in 2016. By all accounts, becoming the chief of police changed him. And we're going to come back to this because I don't think it changed him at all. I just think having the badge of chief of police made it so he felt like he didn't have to hide it anymore and do it under, under the covers.
Yeah.
The power of the position made him feel superior to pretty much everyone else in the town. Invincible was the adjective that his wife, Linda Hardin, used to describe how he felt after he was promoted to chief of police. He consistently overstepped his authority. And I'll give an example of what he would do in overstepping his authority sometimes, like an example of how he would do that. And that example is what directly led to Appleton's death. So we'll get into that in a moment. But she basically was like, he was drunk on power. If someone pissed him off, he put his shotgun in their face. He had his shotgun on him day and night, whether he was on duty or not.
Wow.
He was God, basically. So in the spring of 2016, so he had just been promoted to chief of police. So this is a year before Appleton's murder. In the spring of 2016, he was up to some dumb shit as usual. He followed a car into some brush. He was like, so he saw a car drive into, like, think about property, wooded acreage, but there is a driveway into it, like a pathway that you can drive into it and you kind of go in. It's undeveloped property, but you can go in there or whatever. And Hardin saw this car drive into this brush to this wooded area. And he was like, I wonder what the fuck they're up to. I'm going to follow them. I'm going to get them doing something. So he was in his cruiser, his cop car. So he followed and turned into this brush area and he ended up hitting something. And he completely tore up the bottom of his car and he punctured his radiator. So now his cop car's all fucked up. And he's like, so he was mad about that. Well, the person he was following was James Appleton. And he knew who it was. He knew it was James Appleton. And he was following him. Well, he being Hardin, insisted the damage to his car was 100% Appleton's fault. Appleton was up to something dumb and nefarious and possibly illegal. And so Hardin was investigating, and because of that, his cruiser got damaged, and Hardin is on the hook to fix it and to pay for it. And Appleton refused. He was like, "That I'm not going to fix something you broke. How in any way is this my fault?" And Hardin got in his face. Turd. Appleton wasn't scared. He refused to back down, and a feud between the two men was born. They fucking hated each other. They hated each other. In the end, Hardin was forced to resign as police chief just 4 months after being appointed to the position because of this bullshit situation that he got himself into. He blamed everything on Appleton. And just 9 months later, Hardin executed Appleton by shooting him in the face with a shotgun. Now, when I first was like, wait, he was going to get fired if he didn't resign. So he was basically forced to resign as police chief because he got into a feud with this guy because he followed him into the brush. Like, there's got to be more to this story. There is. Hardin has been in law enforcement for 35 years.
Jesus.
And over that entire time period of his career, he was basically unable to keep a job because he was consistently getting fired or being forced to resign because he was pulling some bullshit on citizens because he was drunk with power.
Yeah. Wow.
Even though Gateway, Arkansas is a small town and everybody knows everybody, because Hardin was identified through a witness, John Bray, as having been the one to shoot and kill James Appleton, the authorities wanted to forensically link Hardin to Appleton's murder. They wanted to make sure that they had a shut and locked case against him and that it couldn't come back where there was reasonable doubt. They wanted to get the smoking gun. And also, the fact that he was a law enforcement officer was shocking to the community, shocking to the other law enforcement agencies in surrounding towns and cities. People were losing their goddamn minds over this because it's almost like, I mean, it's one thing if you're a jackass but you're not in a position of authority. It's another if you're in a position of authority. It's stratospheric if you're in a position of authority in the law enforcement field.
Yeah, it's like the Johnny Pius case with James Burke,
That's
the chief of
exactly it.
police that was just doing whatever he wanted and covering shit up. It was crazy.
Yep. Yep.
Ugh.
And I'm really glad you brought up the Johnny Pius case. So that was episode 50. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to draw some parallels to that. So hold on to that little nugget. So they being the authorities, really wanted to link Hardin to Appleton's murder forensically. So they investigated just like they would if they didn't have an eyewitness statement. They investigated as if they didn't know who shot Appleton. Well, a piece of investigating in this day and age is DNA analysis, naturally. Months go by, they submitted DNA. When they entered Hardin's DNA into CODIS, when they finally got the DNA results back, they were surprised to get a hit to an unsolved crime from 20 years ago.
Holy shit.
In 1997, Amy Harrison was a school teacher at Frank Tillery School in Rogers, Arkansas. She was married to Andrew Harrison, who was a police officer in Rogers. Rogers sits about 17 miles, 27 kilometers from Gateway. So they're very close to each other. On Sunday, November 9th, 1997, around 9:30 a.m., Amy went to the school and was at the school that she worked at preparing her lesson plans for the coming week. A church used the cafeteria in the school on Sundays for church services. Many people were in this building. There were tons of people there. And Amy, Amy worked in a classroom where it was two classrooms that had a partition running down the middle, but the partition was removed to make one big classroom. But if you made it into two smaller classrooms, they each had their own entrance. So with this one big classroom, there were two doors to get in and out on either side. And
Okay.
when she was in there, she would lock the doors. I mean, she's a woman alone. We've talked about this a lot. Safety, whether there is a church service going on in the cafeteria down the hall is irrelevant. If you're alone, you manage your safety. And she did. She managed her safety. So she was doing her lesson plans. About an hour later, around 10:30 or so, she needed to use the little girl's room. She had to go to the restroom. And so she left her classroom and she walked the short distance to the teacher's lounge. Now, in this Devil in the Ozarks documentary, she is interviewed extensively and at length. And she goes through every detail about the start of her day and all of that stuff and kind of like how it happened. But she had to go to the bathroom. So she walked to the teacher's lounge. Teacher's lounge was like maybe 15, 20 feet from her classroom. And she used the bathroom in the teacher's lounge. The teacher's lounge had two single stall bathrooms with a full door, like kind of like a gas station bathroom or a doctor's office waiting room. It's like that. She went in, She did her business. When she opened up the bathroom door and walked back into the teacher's lounge, she said that like when you leave the bathroom, like I'm trying to picture and like do it. Like you leave, you open up the door handle, you're kind of looking down at the door handle, and as you step out, you look up to where you're walking. And she looked up right to a gun in her face.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And it was being held by Hardin.
Mm.
She didn't know him, but it was Grant Hardin, and he had a half ski mask over his face that covered his face from like the nose up, like the top of his nose up, and then he had sunglasses on. He had no shoes on, and he did not touch anything in the school. So he was deploying tactics to prevent identification and
Right.
discovery. In 1997, we didn't have DNA like we have today. So he's standing there with a gun pointed at her, and he pushed her back into the bathroom that she had come out of. He forced her to remove some of her clothing, and then he forced her to do sexual acts on him in that bathroom. When that was done, he took her from the bathroom and took her into a classroom that was adjacent to the teacher's lounge, but wasn't the classroom that she was originally in. It was a different
Okay.
classroom. And there he brutally raped her, like full on, while a Sunday church service was going on in the cafeteria.
Ugh.
Then he finishes up. He tells her, don't go anywhere. Don't move until I leave, yada, yada, yada. He leaves. She has no idea who this guy is. She's never seen him before. He lives in Gateway. She lives in Rogers. She doesn't know who he is. But after he left, she called the police and she reported the rape. And then she went to the hospital and she had a rape kit performed, which women who are sexually violated, it's one of the worst things that can happen to a woman. But then you have to go to the hospital to preserve evidence, and you're violated all over again
Right.
because you have to get the evidence. And she was like, fucking get it. This woman is very strong because Hardin did leave his DNA inside her. So authorities launch an investigation. They interview her. They question people. It goes cold. They just don't have any leads. No one knows what happened. Nobody saw anything. She doesn't know who it is. There was no forensic evidence. There was literally nothing for them to go on until 2017. Amy waited 20 fucking years for the phone call that finally came. Investigators gave her a photo lineup to see if she could identify the guy that raped her. And she said what she did. She had about probably like a dozen photos that she had to look through. Here it is, 2017. This happened in 1997.
Whew.
And she only saw the lower half of this guy's face. So what she did was she took her thumb and she said she just put it over the top of every single face of the picture to see if she could recognize the lower half of the face of the asshole that raped her. And she said she got to the picture and she said, that's him. And it was Hardin.
Wow.
20 years later, she fucking remembered what his lower face looked like. Yeah.
Which is awesome and horrifying because that means that his face has been in her, just embedded in her brain for 20 fucking years, haunting her. And
Yep.
that makes me,
Yep.
so
Almost like a
sad.
brand on her brain. So, because Hardin murdered Appleton, because the investigators decided to do the best job possible and they collected DNA evidence, and because even though they knew who he was, they still ran his DNA profile through CODIS. They surprisingly, I mean, you see these authorities interviewed in this documentary and they are like blown away. They don't even know how to process the fact that it's a fellow law enforcement officer that many of them worked with. They're like, holy shit. Because of all of this, they were able to solve an unsolved rape case decades old. To that end, I say James Appleton did not die in vain.
Right.
He brought justice to Amy Harrison. If Hardin hadn't killed Appleton, he would likely have never, ever been identified as Amy's rapist. Because DNA never would have gotten into the system, and there never would have been a match. On October 16th, 2017, 48-year-old Hardin was convicted of murder in the first degree of James Appleton. He pled guilty and he was sentenced to 30 years. 4 months later, on February 12th, 2018, almost 1 year to the day after he murdered James Appleton, Hardin pled guilty to 2 counts of rape and was sentenced to another 50 years. He got 25 years for each count. Unfortunately, he got a fucking plea deal. And I have very strong feelings about this. He got a plea deal in which he is required to serve at least 21 years of his 30-year sentence for murdering Appleton and 14 years of his 50-year sentence for raping Amy Harrison before he is eligible for parole.
All right. Trying to do some fancy math here.
You want me to math for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. So he has to do 35 years before he's eligible for parole.
So he would be, old as fuck. It's still not enough.
I am astonished that he's even eligible for parole at any point. I dislike it very much that he has the option for parole.
Yeah, I totally agree. And why did he get a plea deal?
I'll explain.
Okay.
I'll explain using my deductive reasoning skills because it was never clearly stated in any source material I was able to find. I even poured through affidavits of arrest. I tried to find all of the court records and such. There was never really any additional explanation other than if he pled guilty and took ownership and accountability by pleading guilty and admitting his guilt, then he would not get death penalty comes off the table and he would be eligible for parole after a certain period of time. And I'm sure that they wanted justice for James Appleton and his family, Amy Harrison and her family, fucking Hardin's family, the community, fellow law enforcement officers. I'm sure they wanted justice for all of that and they wanted him to do time.
Yeah.
And it's always better if they can plead guilty and avoid a trial.
Right.
But the fact that he was a law enforcement officer that used his position to prey on everyone else that he wanted to, I don't ever want him out of prison. Hardin went to church every fucking Sunday. He was married. He had a daughter. His wife, Linda Hardin, was also interviewed for the Discovery Plus documentary, and she described Hardin as her soulmate. She said he was a gentleman. She said he was the only man she ever felt safe with.
Fuck off.
She really struggled to reconcile the double life he had been leading for years, especially when his DNA linked him to the rape of Amy Harrison in 1997, because they were already fucking married by then. Yeah. Hardin killed one person. He raped one person. But his victims are in the teens and 20s. He left so many victims in his wake by murdering James Appleton and raping Amy Harrison. Appleton's entire family are victims. Amy Harrison and her family are victims. The rape destroyed her marriage to Andrew Harrison. The entire community's trust in law enforcement was broken. The law enforcement officers that had to work with him and then pick up the fucking pieces of the broken trust are victims. Yeah. Linda Hardin and their daughter are victims. Linda lost her soulmate. Their daughter lost her father. These acts have wide impacts. So I have mixed feelings about Linda Hardin, Grant Hardin's wife. I have mixed feelings about her. Now, she is interviewed extensively in the documentary, Devil in the Ozarks, and she seems like an absolutely lovely woman. And she was choked up about what happened to James Appleton and Amy Harrison. She was choked up, but she believes that her husband is innocent, allegedly. And I'm saying allegedly because I saw this in some source material, but not all. Now, like I said at at the top of this case, there is a ton of information out there, and I'm sure most everybody that's listening is aware of this guy. But most of the information out there is just it's the same information across news sources and platforms and things like that. There are a few things if you dig deep enough that you can find about like Linda Hardin, their daughter, who was also interviewed for the documentary. And even if you don't believe anything in the written word in the source material, if you extrapolate from what you see and hear in the documentary, Linda and Hardin, when they got married, they moved into his childhood home. She still lives there. She still loves her husband. She's still married to him. And she absolutely believes that one day he will be paroled and they will be together again. And she can't wait for that because she loves him with all her heart.
Whew.
So I don't know how to reconcile wanting to still be with someone in a romantic sense that has taken the life of someone without any provocation and raped a woman. Like I don't know how to get my brain wrapped around that.
Yeah, I would say she's got some pretty big goddamn blinders on, and I don't understand it. For her to say that he was drunk on power.
Well, she didn't say that specifically,
Oh,
but she did say that he felt like he was invincible.
right. And I feel like that's an acknowledgement that he was doing some things that he shouldn't be, and she just kind of turned a blind eye. That's
She
just my
did.
take on it. And I love my wife, but if she killed someone and assaulted another person, I would never be able to look at her the same.
Yeah.
It would be a turn for me. I wouldn't be like,
Yeah.
I love her. She's the best. I just, that's
Yeah.
complicated.
Linda Hardin did also say that she knew that he overstepped his authority.
Really.
She knew. She knew.
She knew that he was up to some shit and she just chose to look the other way. I don't know. I don't like it
Yeah.
at all.
So, right now, Grant Hardin is at the Varner Supermax prison. That's where he will be staying for the rest of his sentence, or hopefully until he dies.
And with Supermax, are they pretty well separated from other inmates? Because, I mean, a law enforcement official in prison is a big target. But I also feel like in Supermax, there's not a whole lot of interaction between inmates.
I don't know much about Supermax prisons. I did briefly consider researching what is a Supermax prison versus a medium security prison versus a fucking country club prison. Like I did briefly think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when and I started like looking into it, that is a whole episode in and of itself. To answer your question, I think from the surface level kind of scratching it and going, oh, there's way more here than just like a quick rabbit hole. With Supermaxes, I think there's a host of different scenarios that can be utilized to house the most violent and sociopathic of inmates. And I think one of them is keeping people separated or very small populations, if any. But I think the other thing is that they're pretty solo for like 23 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they get time to like, I don't even know if they get time to commune in a normal like cafeteria hall. I don't know if they get rec time together. What I don't know is if there's different types of Supermax level prisons. Like, is there like Supermax 1, Supermax 2, Supermax? Like, I don't know.
Max to the max.
Max to the if If you're listening and you understand how supermax prisons work in the United States, please write in and let us know. I'm very curious. I'd love to do more research on that. I also, I'm not going to go into who Grant Hardin is, his childhood, his family life. I'm not going into any of that. I don't care. I chose not to go into any part of sort of Grant's childhood or anything like that, which would probably make a very interesting case if there's information out there on his childhood and growing up years, because I would love to understand, was he born this way? Was he made this way? Was there a specific situation that created this behavior? Because it didn't start in 2016 when he became a police chief. He has been acting this way since day one.
Yeah.
So,
The situation that started the feud with Appleton, it seems to me, and I have a big problem with people that can't take ownership for their own shit and their own actions and like to put it out on other people. So you run over something and you fuck up your own car, but you're going to blame it on somebody else. Like that was just a pride issue. That
mm-hmm.
was him not going like I had no business following that guy and I fucked up. I ruined the car. My bad. He had to put it on somebody else, make it somebody else's problem and I it just seems like he just had to put everything on somebody else and try to skate through life just doing whatever the hell he wanted and I that mentality just sickens me, it infuriates me.
Yeah. I have no idea why he was in that school. I have no idea why he was in that school with a fucking shotgun on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, I was gonna add like I was that was
I
one
don't
thing that I
know.
kept thinking like what the fuck was he doing? Was he at church and it was just like, oh, I saw a teacher walk down the hall.
Oh, actually, you might be onto something there. Now, I don't know why he would go to church in Rogers, Arkansas, versus 17 miles away versus Gateway, Arkansas, where he, maybe in 1997 he lived in Rogers. I don't know. But you bring up a really solid point in that maybe he was attending the church service and maybe he was walking around just seeing what kind of shit he could get into if there was, like, if the service was over or something. And
Yeah.
so in the documentary, so now that you say that, you really got my mind spinning, because in the documentary, Amy Harrison talks about how when she was in the classroom and remember she locked the doors, she
Mhm.
was in there
Yeah.
doing lessons plans. She said shortly before she actually left the room to go to the bathroom, she said somebody jiggled the door handle to see if the door was open,
Oh.
and nobody knocked and said, "Hey, is anyone in there?" They just jiggled the door handle. She looked up from what she was doing. She waited to see if it would jiggle anymore, if somebody would knock. Nobody did. A couple minutes later, she opened the door to look outside. Nobody was there, and that's when she decided to go to the bathroom. So I wonder if Hardin was in that school because he was attending church, and then at break or at, you know how like there's community afterwards after you attend
Yeah.
church service and everybody kind of communes afterwards. Maybe he left and decided to just go roam the halls to see what kind of shit he could get into, because that was the kind of guy he was. And he tried to get into the classroom just to see what was behind the door. The door was locked. Okay, whatever. Then he saw her alone walking to the bathroom, and it was a crime of opportunity.
Yeah. Because I can't think if you're like, I'm going to go try and find someone to assault. I'm going to go to a school on a Sunday. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like,
Yeah,
there would have to be some reason. And I mean, he could have easily gone back to his car, taken off the mask, put the gun away, and gone back and sat with his wife at church and continued on
absolutely.
like nothing fucking happened.
That's exactly what he did after he shot and killed James Appleton. Like, literally, right after, you can see video surveillance of him with his wife and his daughter walking into, I don't know, like a fucking Texas Roadhouse or something to eat. And he was just, he did not look perturbed in the slightest on that video.
He's like, I just killed a man and I need some free rolls.
Yep.
That's fucking crazy.
Okay, so if you think about it psychologically, let's say he was there for the church service. Let's say he decided to kind of like quote unquote excuse himself from the community afterwards and go roam the halls to see what he could get into. He saw her. He saw her being Amy Harrison and he decided to rape her. I would love to understand what goes on in a man's brain where they're just in a random situation on a random Sunday morning or whatever, and they see a woman by themselves, and the thought goes through their mind that they want to fucking rape that person. I don't understand it. And he was married.
And a religious man. Like, the hypocrisy is astounding.
Anyway, yeah, so that's Grant Hardin, who's made quite the splash on headlines in the last few weeks. He's a very dangerous man because he's obviously a sociopath.
Right.
Very dangerous man, which is why I do not like the fact that he has option for parole. I just don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm assuming after a prison break and a 12-day manhunt that he is going to get
Denied.
out of prison.
Yeah, I hope not.
And I think he'll get like an additional sentence for that.
One of the things the authorities said after they captured him was that in the coming weeks they plan to interview him. Now, I haven't seen anything out yet about whether or not they have interviewed him. And even if they have interviewed him, there's nothing to say that they would actually advertise that interview or share it with journalists.
Yeah.
But it would be very interesting just so I could try to understand his thought process as to why he did what he did, the way he did it. It was so unprovoked. So essentially, what happened was Hardin was outside working in his yard and he saw Appleton drive by. And he had already made plans with Linda and their daughter to go to dinner, and basically was like, all right, well, take your time. I'm going to just be out in the yard putzing. Whenever you're ready, we'll go. He goes outside. He's doing shit in the yard. He sees Appleton drive by. He grabs his shotgun. He gets in his car and he leaves and he follows Appleton, parks behind him. Bray passes by. He pulls up, shoots Appleton in the face, drives home. He was gone all of maybe 10 minutes, and then says, we need to go to dinner now. And Linda and their daughter is like, oh, okay. Well, you said we could take our time, but okay, we're going to go now. And then they go.
Daddy's hungry.
Dad is hungry.
Fuck.
Yeah. So that was intentional.
Yeah.
That was intentional. It was unprovoked.
Yeah, I've never been in my yard raking and been like, I'm gonna kill that motherfucker. I'll be back. And then you better be ready for dinner, hun.
People in positions of authority that abuse that authority, that is one of the things I can't stand. I can't stand it. Same. Anyway, that's Mr. Grant Hardin for you.
Wow.
So
he's a dick.
We'll see if there's going to be any follow-up reporting about getting him back into the prison, getting him transferred to Varner Supermax.
I hope that plea deal is null and void. I bet that didn't include a fucking prison break. But we'll see.
It didn't. Well, thanks for tuning into another episode of Crime Will Tell, y'all.
Yes, thank you.
Don't forget to check out our website, crimewilltellpod.com. Hit that subscribe button for our YouTube channel. And if you're feeling so inclined, please, please, please leave a rating and a review for us wherever you get your podcasts, if they allow ratings and reviews.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And with that, goodbye, James.
Goodbye, Carrie.
Oh my God, we're twinning.
Damn it, Care Bear.
Are they going to get married?
Yeah, the boys.
You can if you want. Whatever. Okay.
Got too much to do.
Oh my God, there we go.
Was it Mardi Gras?
I don't get it.
This week's gonna be a little wild.
Just kidding.
I'll go punch her in the face real quick.
I need to go to bed.
Aw, thank you.